Member for Kalgoorlie. Member for Kalgoorlie.
I wish to add my congratulations to the Honourable Michelle Roberts on her appointment as the first woman Speaker in this House in West Australian history. It's richly deserved, and I wish to, and I truly will value the support and learning from her and all the rest of the acting speakers over the next 4 years. I would like to firstly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and especially emerging. Their history and culture over 60,000 years is extraordinary, and I learn new things every day. Today I'd like to begin by expressing my enormous appreciation to the electorate of Kalgoorlie for their faith in me. It's been 20 years since Labour last held the seat in Kalgoorlie, and I'm standing here today as the 101st woman to be elected into this Parliament. I'm humbled and honoured, thank you, to be given the privilege to represent you over the next 4 years. I would like to recognise and express gratitude to Karen O'Donnell and his staff for their service over the last 4 years. To my gorgeous daughter, Danielle Foster, I'm so very proud of you. My son-in-law, Rhett Foster, Campbell and Georgie Foster, my beautiful grandchildren. Thank you so much for supporting me as I embark on this major life change. You mean the world to me. To my lifelong friends, thank you for the fun, the laughter, the support and the friendship. I'm so grateful to have you in my life and many of you here today. Let the crazy journey continue. To the people that got me here from the campaign team, the biggest shout out to my campaign director, the Honourable Carl McGinn. What a journey we've been on. You've provided me with support and encouragement, always there to listen and provide advice, and sometimes even to berate. It was all, every part, humbly appreciated. Thank you so much. The only thing I'd like to add is maybe you could have left the shoey out. To Bobby Lee Field, George Fox Taylor, Deanna Lawler, Claycy Hurst, Amy Astle, Melissa Drummond and Eddie Rochester. The endless hours of work and support knew no bounds. I could not have achieved this without you all, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. To the amazing volunteers, all 150 of you, wow, what a fantastic team. Door knocking, phone calling, standing on market stalls in 40-degree heat, nothing was too big an ask. The win was for you all. To WA Labour, the support I received was outstanding. I'd like to give a big shout out to Tim Picton, Ellie Whittaker, and all the staff that worked tirelessly to get the massive Labour win. Last and definitely not least, I'd like to thank my staff, Claycy Hurst, my electoral officer, and Katie Jane Anderson, my research officer. You have hit the ground running, setting up the office and all the logistics that go with that. Thanks to you both, constituents are being seen and their concerns are being heard and dealt with. Well, I never thought I'd be standing here, and I'm still pinching myself. How did I get here, surrounded by the Premier, ministers and members of Parliament, people I've looked up to for years and that I can now call colleagues? It goes back to Swansea in Wales, where I was born in the 1960s, and to the best dad in the world, the most influential person in my life. After my mum died when I was 8 years old, it was my dad who had to take the reins. Not easy for a man in the 1970s, but he taught me so much. I learned about the Labour Party, about unions, about how social justice was fundamental to any society. Importantly, he taught me how, as a girl and then a woman, I could achieve anything in life. My dad grew up in a very working class area of Manchester in the UK. His own dad died when he was 7, in a time when there was no social security to rely on. His mum worked 3 jobs and they lived in a one-up, one-down room with a wash house used by 15 families. I remember going there as a child, and times were really tough. After lying about his age to get into the Royal Air Force in the Second World War, he met my mum on a training course in Wales. They continued their courtships through letters from India, Israel and Japan, and then married after the war. He worked on the shop floor and was a very strong union man and a great Harold Wilson fan. I saw how important his values were, especially when he went out on strike to support the coal miners during the Margaret Thatcher days. We used to sit and talk for hours about how this affected towns around the UK. It was tragic to watch, and many communities, particularly in Wales, still haven't recovered. What an education that was, and the message was loud and clear. We needed to look after each other. It started the course of my life as a Labour supporter. I left Wales in 1989 and came to Western Australia, where I entered my first job in the public sector through the Fire Brigade, now DFAS, also holding the role as the designated sexual harassment officer, a challenging role in the then very male-dominated environment. I reflect on the culture that has been exposed in federal parliament and the international Me Too movement. I also reflect on how critical it is for us to be vigilant. Labour for me is about equality and justice. As one of the many women now sitting in WA Parliament, I am confident the party I am proud to represent will continue to hold these values to the core. And I'll speak more about this in a moment. So to the goldfields. I moved to Kalgoorlie border in 1994 and spent the next 10 years working for the Goldfields Esperance Development Commission, living through a boom and bust when the gold price went down to $250 an ounce. It was during this time that I met the Honourable Ian Taylor, who was the member for Kalgoorlie for 15 years. I worked on Ian's campaign during that time, and he has offered me support and friendship since then. And I am incredibly grateful that Ian is here today. I continued my state government experience with a role as the manager of intergovernment relations at the Department of Education. I was lucky enough to be part of the education revolution started by the then Federal Minister for Education, Julia Gillard, what an inspirational woman and a true leader. After 30 years working for the state government, I started my own small business in Kalgoorlie border, a role I loved, allowing me to work with many community groups and businesses by helping them get grant funding for much-needed projects. I'd like to focus on community life for a moment. I'm an all-in type of person and believe that any place is what you make it. That is definitely the case in the goldfields. The way the community embraces people is incredible. I was lucky enough to become the president of the Goldfields Women's Healthcare Centre, a wonderful organisation doing extraordinary things. The Chief Executive Officer, Gloria Moyle, is an inspiration to me, and I'm honoured to call her my close friend. Bringing Rosie Batty to Kalgoorlie border for International Women's Day in 2019 was a highlight. Such an inspiration woman who generously shared her time with so many people, and I saw how her compassion had such an influence on them. Through my own involvement in community groups, I've been able to give back in a small way, and I hope to continue to do so. Communities play an important role in every aspect of our lives. We have communities in our friends, our family, our employment, our neighbourhood, and in so many other places. Having a sense of community unites us. Being a part of community can give us opportunities to connect with people. I'm sure that everyone thinks that their place and community is special, but I know that the Goldfields is unique. Being part of this community gives us a great sense of belonging. We are part of a group of people who want to help each other, whether socially or professionally. It gave my career a huge boost back in 1994, and I'm positive that I'm one of just thousands of stories that are very similar. I would encourage anyone who wants a great lifestyle, great income, great opportunities, come to the Goldfields. You won't be sorry. Of course, the Kalgoorlie electorate will be boosted by some fantastic infrastructure projects that I fought hard to get as election commitments. They include the $5 million upgrade to the Neil Hansen Stadium, a $2.1 million youth hub, and a $600,000 to build a large-scale nature playground on the site of the Kalgoorlie Bushland Park. These will make a big difference to livability of the Goldfields region. So Kalgoorlie border and the Goldfields, what a rich history and a powerful history it has. And I'm sure that previous members of Kalgoorlie have stood in this House, Acting Speaker, Mr. Speaker, and told of the impact that the Goldfields region has had in Australia. In 1983, 3 down-on-their-luck Irishmen, Paddy Hannon, Tom Flanagan and Danny Shea, stumbled across 100 ounces of nuggets when they stopped to replace a shoe for their horse, or so legend has it. Just a decade later, the twin boon towns of Kalgoorlie and Boulder would be home to the fabled Golden Mile, reputedly the richest square mile on Earth and one of the greatest concentrations of underground mines ever established. Today, Kalgoorlie border and the Goldfields is not only a thriving region to almost 40,000 residents, but it's also a living heritage area. The new and the old sit in harmony side by side, acknowledging a rich past and looking to fresh horizons. This natural bounty combined with its striking landscapes, amazing sunsets and remarkable Aboriginal history makes the Goldfields a truly unique and distinctive place. And this wonderful history continues. Just 3 months ago, the Super Pit joint owners of Northern Star and Saracen Minerals Holding merged with a value of $16 billion. The merger created a new top 10, a global gold major with a world-class portfolio. For the first time in its 125-year history, Kalgoorlie's famous Golden Mile has now been consolidated under one owner. This was achieved through Raleigh Finlayson and Bill Beaumont, two graduates of Kalgoorlie's own West Australian School of Mines. The future of the mining industry is secure, well beyond my lifetime, I'm sure. One of my strengths lies in being a strong and opinionated woman. I feel passionately about giving women an equal voice in all aspects of life. In 2021, we are dealing with a tsunami of issues surrounding the treatment of women. Women are being underpaid, women are being underrepresented, women are being bullied and harassed, and women are being beaten and abused. So isn't it time to gain the respect we deserve? Time for us to be treated as a core part of society. Time our ideas and opinions were valued. Time we felt safe in our workplace. Time we felt safe in the street and in our homes. It's 2021, 100 years since Edith Cowan entered this Parliament as the first woman. We have a first Madam Speaker. When she came to this House in 1994, she was only the 18th woman to be elected into the Legislative Assembly. This year, I am one of 13 women coming in at one time. What an achievement this is for women, for the Labour Party, for Western Australia. I am a feminist, and it's taken me decades not to feel I had to apologise for that label. Getting equal rights, opportunities, status and respect are all that feminists want. Michelle Obama said, "I have never been able to find out precisely what feminism is. I only know that people call me a feminist whenever I express sentiments that differentiate me from a doormat." I wholeheartedly agree. If we have learned anything from what has happened in Canberra recently, we must recognise that women are standing up and using their voice. They've had enough. Here in this Parliament, I can only be humbled and grateful that I am in this special place at this special time. Now we have almost 50% women representing the West Australian people. Imagine that. This demonstrates true democracy. We will participate and our voices will be heard. We will add a different perspective to discussions, and trust me, the sky won't fall in. I've learned so much over the past year. Of significance is the unwavering support I have received from the Labour caucus. I would like to single out two women who were constantly checked in on me, gave me tips and advice on how to survive the campaign, and have been there every step of the way. Member for Kingsley and member for Swan Hills, the two Jesses. Thank you so much. Knowing that I can count on you for your support for the next 4 years means so much to me. Having worked among the community on so many issues, I've heard a range of different matters that are important to people, and I want to be able to make a difference as a Member of Parliament in so many ways. Access to mental health is one of the big ones, especially among young people. This was highlighted for me when, over the last 6 months, a number of young people in the Goldfields sadly lost their lives to suicide. On the 11th of January 2021, a friend of mine in Kalgoorlie, Sharon Duffy, lost her 19-year-old son, Bryce Duffy, to suicide. It is with Sharon's permission that I recount her story. For over a decade, Sharon Duffy sat powerless, helpless and scared as she watched her son continue to take his own life, when the system that was supposed to support him continued to let him down. Since the age of 10, Bryce had had many attempts at taking his own life, but due to his young age and issue with drugs, there were limited options of support available. On 3 occasions after a suicide attempt, Sharon rushed Bryce to hospital, but faced the same issues each time. She was told there were no mental health beds at the hospital for youth under the age of 18. which meant that Bryce could be kept in emergency overnight but could not be admitted and was sent home the next day. In Sharon's words, there were so many times that I could tell he was suicidal or had self-harmed, where I considered taking him to hospital. But it was too hard to get him there, and what was the point? I knew they would just send him home, she said. I spent so long, so many years not being able to do anything. As a mother, you're supposed to be able to care for your child, protect them, and when you're powerless to do that, it is really upsetting. It was really hard, lots of sleepless nights and crying, stressing, terrified that my child was going to kill himself, and now it's too late. It's too late for my boy, but I don't want it to be too late for anyone else. Sharon used her voice during this tragic time to call for stories from other parents. 20 submissions from the Kalgoorlie community outlined that the problems that Sharon's family faced were unfortunately all too common. These submissions detail the personal experience families have endured trying to get their family members, often children and youth, help from services. Multiple gaps were identified, and as a parent and grandparent, this broke my heart. No parent should have to go through this. One of the first things I did once elected was bring Sharon together with key health professionals, and the challenges and hurdles faced by parents was discussed in detail. As you said, Sharon, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. We need to support people in their times of need and ensure the system supports them and makes them well again. If we do not do this, then more people will suicide and more families and communities would be left grieving the loss of those they love. Thank you, Sharon, for your strength, your ability to share and bring others along with you. Statistics from the Australian Institute of Welfare and Health show that in 2019, suicide accounted for 1.9% of all deaths in Australia. That's shocking. And for Aboriginal Australians, it's even higher, a devastating 5.9% of the population. As a government and a community, may I seek an extension?
Extension granted.
As a government and a community, we must address this. We must do better, and we can do better. I will be working with Sharon to push very hard for the changes that we so desperately need. Thankfully, I am now part of a government that understands how important it is to significantly fund mental health initiatives. A $360 million package will be funded to address critical gaps in the mental health system, and importantly, this will include more than $122 million in the expansion of mental health services to young people. This privileged position I find myself in will never be taken for granted, I promise. I was lucky enough to count on the Premier Mark McGowan, who visited Kalgoorlie on so many times during the campaign. It enabled me to discuss many issues that are important in my electorate. And if you haven't walked down the Hannon Street with the Premier, you really haven't lived. What an experience. Of course, if Mark wasn't available, the cardboard cutout was still a very popular choice for a selfie. To the other ministers that visited often, I am so grateful for your support and encouragement. I would like to spend a special mention to the Honourable Alana McTiernan, who came up when I was just deciding to be pre-selected, and she grilled me. And anybody that knows her knows what that is like, but thankfully I survived, and her advice has been so warmly welcomed. I look forward to working with the Premier, Ministers and Members of Parliament to implement the plan for the goldfields, and I promise I'll be fighting hard to bring benefits to the electorate of Kalgoorlie that it so richly deserved. I will represent every section of our wonderful, diverse community as best as I possibly can over the next 4 years. A lot was made during my campaign about how the regional voice will be overshadowed by metropolitan members of Parliament. Well, the West Australian voters have spoken. This Labor state government now has 9 regional members, and you can count on us for fighting hard in our electorates. No one needs to be in any doubt that we will be heard, loud and strong. I chose Western Australia as my adopted home, and I am so glad that my journey took me to the goldfields, where I am now living with the 3rd generation of my family in this incredible community. You have my heart and my family. I am so passionate about so many things, but the core values that my dad taught me was how everyone needs to be treated with fairness and compassion. This is what I see Labour represent, and it will remain at the forefront of my mind at all times. Dad, I hope you're looking down. This is for you. Thank you.